Welcome to Real Estate Radio Power Investing, an informative and engaging hour discussing everything you need to know about the world of real estate investing. Your host, Tom K. Wilson, provides you with insight and guidance from his years of experience as a successful real estate entrepreneur on how to buy, sell, finance, and invest in real estate, and much more. Now, here's your host for Real Estate Radio Power Investing, Tom K. Wilson.
Thanks for tuning into our program on real estate investing, where we empower you with the education to maximize your investing success. We're broadcasting from the number one business radio station in the San Francisco Bay Area, KDOW AM 1220, the Wall Street Business Network. I'm Tom K. Wilson, your host for this weekly program, exclusively on real estate investing. If you can't make the live show, you can catch our podcast on TomWilsonProperties.com or on iTunes or on YouTube. This program today is about negotiating and sales success with veteran and legendary Tom Hopkins, whom I'll introduce in just a moment. You can go to TomWilsonProperties.com for a lot of education content. Sign up for our newsletter, which also gives you access to a lot of exclusive syndication, commercial, and multifam properties that are only available to our client base. Also, we welcome your requests for topics and guests and your questions that we can ask and for an answer for you and ask for our guests. And we are certainly available for consultation at any time. Our guest today, Tom Hopkins, has worked up through the ranks the hard way and found success in the ability to learn how to convince people to do what he would like them to do, and I think approaches people in a win-win approach and a very genuine approach. I've had the great pleasure of knowing him for a number of years and spending a fair amount of time with him in recent years, and he's certainly the best in his business. He's ranked as America's number one sales trainer and the builder of sales champions, and a lot of people, as we'll discuss later, kind of gets scared by the term sales, but everybody sells. Even if we, as we start with babies, we learn how to get what we want. And Tom's the best at teaching us how to do that. He's taught hundreds of thousands of people literally around the world, Fortune 500 companies, teams. He is, within 7 years of getting the real estate business, he sold 365 properties in 1 year. So do the math. And fortunately, his broker was smart enough to decide, I think we ought to leverage this, and got him to start teaching others, and that which launched his education career. And he's and not only is he good at what he does, he's a wonderful person. And Tom, it's wonderful to have you on the program. And how has your year been so far, Tom?
Well, Tom, it's been unbelievable. and your listeners should use that word, because you could have the worst day, week of your life, and you're just down in the dumps, and someone says, "How are you doing?" Just be excited and say, "Unbelievable," and it covers it either way.
It does, and probably just saying that and practicing in the mirror will give you a lift even on a bad day by being able to present it in a positive light.
Exactly.
So, Tom, let's tell your story here briefly, because I want to get the meat of the program into some nuts and bolts for folks. Sure. And tell them how they can get more training with you. What first interested you in getting involved in real estate sales at all?
Well, I didn't go to college, so I didn't have an education or a background. And when I quit college after 90 days, I came home, and my dad was so disappointed, because he had this dream of me, his oldest son, would go to college, get a degree, become successful. And I came home, I said, "Dad, I'm not going to college, I quit." And I'd never seen him cry. He was a very strong
Wow.
man. Tears filled his eyes.
Oh, my.
And he said, "Son, I'll always love you because you're my son. Even though now, based on your decision to not go to college, I know you'll never amount to anything." And what's amazing, Tom, at that moment, it was like he lit a fire in my belly to say, you know what, I'm going to prove you wrong. I will find a way to become a success.
Isn't it interesting how milestones like that in people's life can kind of send them one of two digital directions, right? It can you kind of destroy and depress you for life, or you say, by golly, I'm going to rise up from this and prove it wrong.
And you have no idea, Tom, the number of people that I meet that come to our programs that say, I had something to prove to this or to that. And I think if you look at most hugely successful people, they had something to prove at a point in their life to overcome what someone said they couldn't do. And that was, of course, my case. And so I was a construction worker for a year carrying steel. Some people might be listening now from Los Angeles. Well, I was a 17, 18-year-old kid carrying steel at Dodger Stadium. And I did that for a year, the most back-breaking, severe physical labor is an iron worker. And I carried steel number 11 bars, which are 1 3/4 in diameter, 60 feet long, 208 pounds.
I see you remember that to this day.
Oh, I do. Because I
can feel it right now.
all day carrying steel. And my father came to me, he says, you know, I've heard you're the hardest worker on the job. And he said, you've got a nice way with people. Why don't you get a real estate license? And, of course, right away I got very afraid. I said, Dad, I couldn't pass an exam. And he said, son, you can. Give it a try, blah, blah, blah. Well, I failed my real estate exam 3 times. And the 4th time I passed. And then I couldn't find a broker, Tom, that wanted to hire me. I mean, I was just 19. I looked about 17. I didn't have a car. I was on a motorcycle. I didn't have any clothes to wear for real estate sales. And, I mean, no one wanted to hire me. And finally, I kept riding my motorcycle after work to every real estate office that was open. And, you know, one broker, he said, you know what, I like your attitude. I'm going to give you a chance. Show up Monday at 8 o'clock in the morning for our office meeting, and we're going to give you a chance to sell real estate for us. Well, of course, the only suit I owned was a band uniform. I played in a band when I was 17, and we had band uniforms that were silver with purple lame collars. And so I walked into that dang office off my motorcycle, and I'll never forget, Tom, he looked up, he goes, everybody look over there, that is our newest agent. He's not quite 20, and he's wearing that outfit because I told him to wear a suit. Now, if he can make money on a motorcycle and a band uniform, my God, you all better get rich. And that's how I started. And you know what's so funny is I did nothing for 4.5 months. I mean, I was almost out of money from my construction work and living in a little apartment, scared to death, broke. And fortunately, the company hired a man named J. Douglas Edwards, who was back then called the guru of American selling. And I paid to go see him for a 3-day seminar. And I just absorbed everything about questioning, listening, calling for the order, getting the check. And all of a sudden, my life started changing. I made one sale, another sale. And all of a sudden, I went, hey, I can do this. And all of a sudden, bingo, the next 2 years, I became the top real estate agent in California.
It's a little success can really inspire you to jump up to the next level, can't it? Yeah.
Oh, it definitely is. It's so important that people realize the little challenges that you overcome, plus the little successes you get, make you stronger, make you have some ability to cope with the pain of rejection, the pain of failure, and continue. And that's kind of what happened to me. And gosh, all of a sudden I'm getting these darn trophies for being the top real estate agent in California. And that's how it all started. And ever since then, I've been teaching others how to do what you need to do to make lots of money in real estate and sales.
I forget, was that Coldwell Banker or Cornish and Carey? Or who was that broker?
I was Coldwell Banker.
Coldwell Banker, yep. And my gosh, how smart that manager was to see the leveraging power that you could have by teaching others. I mean, it was probably a tough decision for him. My gosh, here's my top producer. I'm going to yank him off of that job. But I think if he can teach others how to do that, I can leverage it. That was a pretty gutsy move and a pretty smart person, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a win for both of us. Because the people I trained with his company made him a lot of money. And then, of course, after that, I went out and wrote my first book, and it became a New York bestseller. And that was kind of how everything evolved to where I am today, doing seminars all over the world, which is just fabulous to fly into other countries. I just got back from China, and, they're wonderful people in Beijing, and they loved our training. So it's a great life to teach others. To have a better life is a wonderful life to live.
Indeed. We just got about a minute here for this first segment. Do you think salespeople, ones who have good sales qualities, do you think how much of that is kind of inherently born and how much of it is trained?
Well, I believe those that really feel they are good at it don't like to be trained because they think they're good. Those that aren't good at it and open their minds, I call them the interested introvert instead of the interesting extrovert. The interested introvert can do better long term because they're open to be trained on questioning, listening, not talking, and telling.
Very interesting. It's you see sometimes people who are maybe not at top level academically, and they kind of are able to drift a little bit, not work too hard because they're kind of inherently sharp, but they don't do as well as those I find that sometimes have maybe have some challenges to overcome, and they just try harder and work harder and have more of a passion for it and are successful. And I hear your point. We have with us today the legendary Tom Hopkins, who's America's #1 sales educator, and obviously has a wonderful passion for it. And we got some more great questions for Tom when we get back on the program for Real Estate Radio Power Investing. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Power Investing. Streaming live on iHeart, TuneIn, and KDOW.biz. For more information on today's topic or guest, visit TomWilsonProperties.com. That's TomWilsonProperties.com. Again, your host for today's edition of Real Estate Radio Power Investing, Tom K. Wilson.
With us today is legendary America's #1 sales trainer, Tom Hopkins. And, I sometimes reluctantly use the word sales with people because it scares a lot of people away, but it's the reason that I thought that would be very appropriate is that everybody in real estate investing is negotiating all the time. They're negotiating a buy, they're negotiating with as a seller, they're negotiating with contractors and so forth. So we are always in the business of trying to convince someone to do something that would be advantageous to us. And some people take a win-lose approach to that. And from my experience with you, Tom, you take a win-win, that you want both people away feeling like they got a good deal, right?
Tom, so true. In fact, I can tell you so many stories. We don't have time for it in this program, but I can't tell you how many people have come up to me. I did a seminar in San Francisco a while back, and a man came up to me, And, at a break, and he said, Tom, I know you don't recognize me, but my wife and I came into your real estate office in 1969, and we wanted to rent a home. And you were so strong on belief in not renting but owning, and you put together a transaction where we bought a home, and we had the ability to move in for the same amount that we were going to rent for. And I just want to thank you because we are now retired, but I paid $19,000 for the home in 1968, 69, and I just sold it for $430,000, and it is the major portion of our net worth retirement. Now, you see, you can't buy something like that, Tom. That is the biggest reward you get when you sell someone something that benefits them more than yourself. And that's why I'm so passionate on learning the art of communication, learning the art of selling for the right reasons, which is not for your benefit, but for the consumer that says yes and spends the money.
How do you go about determining what the other person's needs are that you can meet and get what you want to? How do you initiate that process?
Well, what's so funny, Tom, is you said the word needs, and I believe in acronyms. Meaning, an acronym is letters you can learn the essence of your presentation. So years ago, I said to qualify who should say yes, let's take the letters N-E-A-D-S, not N-E-D-S, but N-E-A-D-S, needs. And I took the letters and I made each of them a concept. Like the N starts with what do they have now, because that tells you what they're like. Explore whatever a person has invested in, and it'll tell you a little bit about them. If they've never invested in an apartment or an income property, they're not knowledgeable, so there must be education, lots of education involved. The E is what do they enjoy about what they have now. If they did invest in a property, an apartment, an income home, what do they like about it? Enjoy. The A is what would they like to alter. Alter means change or improve. The D, of course, is what did they enjoy most and desire next. And then the S, of course, is I am the solution to satisfy what they want now, enjoy, alter, who's the decision maker, and the solution. And that's a formula that the folks right now listening can take and start using.
That's terrific. It's amazing, isn't it, how many salespeople today still seem to think that it's for them to project and put out what they want the other person to do before they ever figure out or ask the person they're talking to what their needs are. And I guess even people that do that, I think intellectually know that that's probably not the right thing to do, but it's a hard gate to get over. When we come back with Tom Hopkins, we're going to ask him about reading body language. How do you get the other person to agree, developing patience, be able to walk? So stay with us here, and we'll be back in just a moment with Tom Hopkins on KDOW 1220 AM.
Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Power Investing. Streaming live on iHeart, TuneIn, and KDOW.biz. For more information on today's topic or guest, visit TomWilsonProperties.com. That's TomWilsonProperties.com. Again, your host for today's edition of Real Estate Radio Power Investing, Tom K. Wilson.
We're honored to have America's #1 sales trainer and legendary Tom Hopkins with us today, and we're talking about not just sales, but how to communicate and how to get agreement with someone and how to negotiate with others. It all uses the same techniques. So, Tom, in this short segment, maybe we can do some give us kind of some short examples of how do you start off? How do you read? How important is reading body language in a communication with somebody?
Well, it's very important. In fact, we call it mirroring, where in a way we kind of look at the way they're structured as far as they're sitting, their arms, so forth. And in a way you try to match what they do, and not for any other reason but to relax them. But I always found that a person started off with their arms folded. They weren't into it yet. And, of course, by asking the right questions, not talking, you can get them to start listening and to start opening their arms and so forth. And, of course, leaning forward, putting their arms on the table instead of sitting back against the back of the chair. This is all body language that lets you know I am warming them up from the no to the yes, which is what this whole process is about.
And you got to get them to got to get them to feel comfortable. And and this I find it's wonderful, isn't it, how efficient and productive our internet and electronic media communications are. But by golly, I don't know. Maybe it's just the folks that have been around a little while, like you and I have, Tom. But I still like, especially on a first meeting, or to something that's really important, if I possibly can, I sure like to get with them person to person.
I totally agree. Yes, electronic communications and transactions have really taken over through the internet and so forth, but I still believe there'll always be the need for the in-person call for an appointment on the phone, in-person internet, in-person meeting, which will always be valuable. So again, I think a lot of people are blessed and yet cursed by electronic transactions.
Yep, I think
they
so too.
They think they're blessed because they don't need to handle the fear of rejection in meeting a person.
Yes.
But they're cursed because they won't get out and have that physical transaction.
Yep. What's an example of how you get someone to agree?
Well, the first thing is you have to always qualify as to their need. What do they have now? Enjoy, alter, decision maker, solution, as I covered. And then, of course, you have to kind of ask questions. Like, for you, I'd say, Tom, our company had the opportunity to increase your following, thus your productivity. Would it make sense to hear what we might do?
Oh, yes.
So you can't say no to that. No. I didn't ask you to buy. I asked you to open your mind to hear what we can do. And then, of course, you might say, well, we're very happy with what we have now. Then, of course, I would say, Tom, obviously, you've been there 5 years. Your company's been in existence 20 years. So 5 years ago, your company made a decision to change from who they had then to who you have now. And you found benefit from the change. Is that right?
Yes.
Why would you deny yourself the at least opportunity for a better benefit by at least considering a change? And that's all we're talking about. If it's not right, we say no, but if it's right, we say yes. So should we at least get together and visit?
And, of course, the answer has to be yes. That's wonderful.
How can they say no to that?
All right. We'll be back in just a minute with more great stuff from Tom Hopkins, America's #1 sales teacher. Stay with us here on KDOW 1220 AM, the Wall Street Business Network.
Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Power Investing. Streaming live on iHeart, TuneIn, and KDOW.biz. For more information on today's topic or guest, visit TomWilsonProperties.com. That's TomWilsonProperties.com. Again, your host for today's edition of Real Estate Radio Power Investing, Tom K. Wilson.
Tom Hopkins with us today, veteran and sales and communication trainer. Tom, how do you know when to start to close, and also what's your kind of strategy on mentally being prepared to walk if you don't get what you want?
Well, first of all, the subject we're talking about, Tom, is like a 2 or 3 hour presentation, but I'm going to just say briefly, you know it's time to close when you see the body language. They start getting agreements, saying yes. That's why you use what we call a tie down, which is taking isn't it, doesn't it, wasn't it, couldn't it, wouldn't it, and getting a little agreement. Like, Tom, that was the best one that we've looked at, wasn't it? And you seemed excited about it, didn't you? And we should consider it, don't you agree? So you get minor agreements building momentum to where we call it the yes momentum to the final agreement. And then, of course, you know, that's 2 hours I covered in 25 seconds. But then you need to ask the right questions. The best question you can ask is just, how are you feeling about all this so far? See, the reason I like that, it's not demanding a yes.
Not demanding a yes or a no. They don't. It's an easier answer. Huh?
How are you feeling about this so far? And, of course, they go, well, we feel pretty good. And then, of course, we move into, why don't we draft up our feelings on the paperwork and see how it looks.
Draft up our feelings on the paper. Oh, that's fabulous. You're so good.
Yeah, but see, what's amazing is drafting up the feelings on the paperwork doesn't threaten them.
No.
And they go, well, we're not going to sign anything. And then you just say, hey, trust me, that's the last thing I'll ask you to do. Which is true.
Yep.
We're going to get the paperwork filled out, and the last thing is their signature. But you relieved pressure, you had fun, and you got filling out the darn form, which the average salesperson does nothing to move on to the paperwork, and you have to. I mean, the average person in sales has got some type of form or their computer, but you got to get started.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense to get people to feel comfortable with moving the process along. So many people, I think, when they get ready to close, then there's this big monumental event where out comes the legal work, and it all of a sudden feels threatening, right?
Well, and I also feel that people have to have their paperwork right there in front of them, ready to go, not pulling out a form, not opening a briefcase. That body language threatens people. And I, of course, when I was selling all those houses, had my paperwork right there, ready to go. And, of course, it was very gentle. Why don't we draft up our feelings and see how it looks? And, of course, the buyer would, as I mentioned, would say, well, we're not signing anything. And I'd always smile, say, hey, last thing I'll ever ask you to do.
Which is perfectly true and honest.
It is true and honest, because that's when we're at the bottom of the paperwork.
Do you recommend drafting that up ahead of time, or fill it out in front of them so it doesn't feel like you've got something pre-planned?
Well, I like drafting it up in front of them. And, of course, you ask a little question, like if it was a husband and wife in a real estate sale, I'd just say, Mary, did you have a middle initial? And she'd go, well, yes, Tom, B. Let me make a note of that. Mary B. Johnson. How about you, John? He'd go, well, wait a second, Tom. We're not sure we're going to buy. I said, I know, but I've learned over the years, a buying decisions is as good as the facts. Let's put the facts down. You can go home and take it, look at it, see if it makes sense. See, always, Tom, relieving pressure. Take it home, see if it makes sense. Because you've got to get them to let you start filling out the form.
Because you'll never get to the end if you don't keep the process moving along.
That's right.
And you try to do it in as unthreatening a way that you can.
And a pro is always relieving pressure. I mean, it's an art form. Selling anything, primarily real estate, is not luck, wit, charm, smile. It's an art form of learning exactly what to say, which has been my life's work. What do you say at the table when it's time to get the check?
And it's a whole multiple step process that you want them to not be aware of, but you know you've got to take it to each step to get to the end.
Exactly. It's unthreatening. It's gentle. I had people who I got the check from that walked in so cold, I'm not buying, blah, 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 blah. And at the end of it, after I got their deposit on the home, they would say, Tom, we really enjoyed this. You were just so non-threatening, no pushy. And, of course, I'm thinking, God, you had no idea how hard I was closing with the right questions. And, of course, that's when a pro takes place in making lots of sales. It's unthreatening, it's gentle, but yet it's powerful.
Yeah, I must say that we have in our business, Wilson Investment Properties, a lot of clients in our business who expected a lot of pressure and pushing them for the close of the order right away, and they keep waiting for it, and they don't get it, and they come back and say, "Well, Tom, we really like the kind of non-pushy, non-threatening way you went about it," and they feel very comfortable with that. Nobody likes like they're getting sold, do they?
No, people love to buy. They just don't want to feel like they're sold. Yeah. And that concept is very powerful.
Tom, we'll be back for a little wrap-up segment here in just a moment. We got Tom Hopkins with us, the #1 American sales agent, and probably international. Tom, you're a little bit too humble, I think, in your marketing and write-up. So stay with us on KDOW 1220 AM, the Wall Street Business Network.
Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Power Investing. Streaming live on iHeart, TuneIn, and KDOW.biz. For more information on today's topic or guest, visit TomWilsonProperties.com. That's TomWilsonProperties.com. Again, your host for today's edition of Real Estate Radio Power Investing, Tom K. Wilson.
Well, it's been great to have Tom here on Real Estate Radio Power Investing, and we cover the tip of the iceberg on a lot of different points today. Tom, you have any kind of wrap-up summary thoughts?
Well, I think that 2017 has the earmarkings of being a fabulous year. After all the political nonsense and what's happened, I just think that people have to get now focused and don't wait for things to get better. I've watched too many people wait for things to pick up before they do. So set your goals, short-term, long-term, get activated, meet more people, follow up, send the thank you notes, do all the right things. And I think you're going to have a great year, and I'm counting on it. Most of my dear friends say, hey, everything's moving into a fabulous 2017, so make it a great year.
What wonderful words, and I'm so excited too. I think it's a wonderful window of opportunity. You never know if it's going to last a year, 3, 5, but you don't want to wait 5 and say, gosh, I should have back 5 years ago done this or that, right? Just make the most of each moment and take a glass half full perspective and just move ahead. One of my good tax advisor friends says he has clients who've spent $40,000, $60,000 in learning about things, and they've never they've never make a move. They've never bought anything or sold anything. So they're kind of afraid to make that plunge. Tom, if people want to get some more specific training, we just gave them a little taste today. Your website is what? TomHopkins.com?
Yeah, TomHopkins.com. And the folks listening, if they go to my free resource page, Tom, I have got a bunch of stuff that they don't pay a dime for. Thank you notes, letters, stuff. And they can come and get that as an example. And then if they like what they hear, they can go into our CDs, DVDs, and so forth. But, we love teaching people in sales, people in business to make more money. So hopefully they'll come visit us on our website, TomHopkins.com.
And I highly endorse Tom and his courses. I've been to some myself. And there's no way you can come away from one of his classes and not come away with both enthusiasm and some nuts and bolts on how to do even better. Even some things that maybe you intellectually knew but forgot, and put them back in action. Tom is just the best. And Tom, thank you so much for being on the program. You're just the best.
Thank you, Tom. All the best to you and your listeners. We'll have a great year. I know you will too. Thank you, my friend. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. And so go to TomWilsonProperties.com and sign up for our newsletter. It gives you access to exclusive deals. There's also a lot of education information on our website, TomWilsonProperties.com as well. And also podcasts. So you can go on there and look at past podcasts, like with Tom Hopkins and Robert Kiyosaki and Bruce Norris and Dr. Doug Duncan from Fannie Mae, and lots of high-level folks just like you've been listening to today with Tom Hopkins. So thanks for being with us on Real Estate Radio Power Investing on KDOW 1220 AM, the Wall Street Business Network. It's always great to have you, and look forward to having you back on the next program. Remember, the only thing that matters is what you do next.